Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Jihu and today we're going to talk about my life. No, I'm just kidding. No, we're actually going to talk about how to get into an art school, or at least how I got into an art school. So to all the young artists out there, I know a lot of you have been thinking about going into art school, whether you are thinking of going there to pursue your education after high school or to follow your dreams in another country. And art schools in general are tough decisions. I know I've been there. And as some of you might know, I go to an art school in Paris called École nationale, supérieure des arts décoratifs, or simply ENSAD. Or some of you might know it as Déco. Quite a few people have been curious about how I went to ENSAD, and I know there aren't a lot of information circulating online if you don't know where to look for. So to make it at least a tiny bit less confusing for you guys, I'm going to tell you all about how I got into my school right after graduating my high school. And I will also focus on the things that helped me the most while I was preparing for my portfolio and what I think really helped me get into schools that I really wanted to go. And before we start, I cannot guarantee that my way was the right way to do it, nor is it something that you should be following in order to get into art schools, and especially in art, there is no right way. So I'm only one student in a school, so this is completely subjective and individual. So if this content helped you, I'm happy that it did, but I also encourage you to look and find your own path too. So usually when people think of public art schools in France, it's usually either Beaux-Arts or Art Déco. And in a nutshell, Beaux-Arts would be more fine art or contemporary art. I think there are 30 to 40 Beaux-Arts schools in France in total. And usually their majors consist of art design and visual communication, stuff like that. But each school always has some kind of specialty or a trait that they're getting more into. So some Beaux-Arts schools would likely focus more on visual communication, or some others might focus more on space design and stuff like that, for example. And as for Art Déco, there are two Art Déco schools in France. So one of them is where I'm from in Paris, and the second one is in Strasbourg. We don't really have an art major, but all the majors have a heavy design trait. So for example, in our school we have 10 majors. I'll list it here. And there are a lot, and most of them have a pretty big design trait, as you can see, and there aren't really very contemporary art or fine art traits in them. So as you can see, that is the difference between Beaux-Arts and Art Déco in a nutshell. And I think that was enough of a brief introduction for all the art schools in France, and now we're going to jump into how I actually got into my art school, starting from the beginning. So after briefly studying at an Anglo-Saxon primary school, I had to come back to Korea, and even with 2-3 years of education in English, I think it really changed a lot. And my parents didn't want me to go back to the Korean education system since it was pretty hectic and they thought I wouldn't integrate very well. They got to know a French international school in Korea. They decided to send me there. I didn't really know any French. All I knew was to say like bonjour, or like comment tu t'appelles, or like je m'appelle Jihu, something like that. So it was like really basic stuff. I couldn't even tell anybody that I was speaking French because it was really like just on the level of common sense. So yeah, that's how I actually got to learn French as a language and also discover art schools in here. So until I started middle school, I really hated that typical fine art or anything that has to do with making something with your hands. Yeah, every art class made me so uncomfortable. I couldn't draw well, like I just never thought it would be a use in my life. But when I started high school, I started to think about what I really wanted to do after high school, and I realized that I really liked cinema, and I thought to build a career in cinema, the only way to get in there was like to either go into a film school or just go do like a film major in any university. And that was what I was preparing for at the moment for like a few months. But a friend actually introduced me to an atelier, or you might call it like a hagwon. And it was like an atelier where they specialize in sending students to art schools in Europe or like the US and something like that. And I decided to do a consultation for the hell of it, and at the end I thought there were other ways to actually do what I wanted to do. So after talking with my parents, we decided to give it a shot. So I start going into the atelier like in my second year of high school, like 2 or 3 times a week after school, I guess, from 6 to 10. So basically there were like 2 exercises every week, an individual work and teamwork, with a time limit of 7 days or sometimes like 4 hours, depends. And on top of that, with some personal projects that I either had to come up with or that I develop an idea from a theme that the teacher gives me. So it really depends. And when I first started out, there were like 30 people. And since I had to show my work and work with them on certain projects, I really worked a lot to catch up to their level, because I knew nothing about art history, contemporary art, whatever, like, but the pressure of that imposter syndrome actually helped me a lot, like grow a lot of reference and quick creative reflexes. But to tell you the truth, until the summer before beginning my final year in high school, like I didn't do shit. I was always slacking off, like ditching classes because my goal and my identity wasn't clear. Like I just started everything like just like that. And how do you expect a girl who's like 17 like just to do whatever like she just had to do? Like I was questioning fucking everything. But when my actual last year of high school started, like it was more chill in the atelier with around like 10 people. So there were like no competition, so I could really focus on myself, and I was more focused. Like I was more motivated to do stuff because I was also more desperate. And so I also arranged with my school to only take the morning classes from January till the exams, which are usually in like April, May. So from September to December, I had classes from 6 to 10, and from January till the exams, I think I was going to the atelier from like 2 to 10. So how the classes went. If I had a new idea, I develop it and I show it to the teacher. And if it's well developed enough to actually go into fabrication, I do the fabrication, like make it and then take a photo. And that's how basically every project went for me. And like at the end, I like to do like 4 or 5 projects at the same time, because there was like also time to dry and solidify for certain projects, and it was actually better for my state of mind to actually work in a sort of a procrastination schedule. Like if I get fed up with the project, I move on to the next one. It actually gives me like a new perspective to look at. So a lot of people who aren't familiar with the art school portfolio whole shenanigans, it really depends, but usually art schools actually ask you to do like between 8 pages to like 15. I don't think I've seen more than 15. So my goal was to have 15 projects. And it was like depending on big or small, like it just had to be 15. And it's probably different for every school, but in average they ask you to put in like 8 to 15 pages. It's probably different for every school, but in average they ask you to put in 8 to 15 pages or projects maximum. And in the end, I pulled some out and altered it for some schools because they also have like different traits between schools. But I think over 13 projects is a safe bet. And overall, personally, I focus more on making myself as diverse as I can. I've heard that French schools look for the potential of a student while they are selecting. So I focused more on expanding my skills with different mediums. So I've worked with paintings, installations, like silk screens, sculpture, video, like all the stuff you can get your hands on. Of course, I was like not good at everything, but still I got to try. I'm not an expert in any of these, but I still got to dip my toes in them to figure out if this is what I like or not. And still keeping a common theme between all the projects. So what I liked about my portfolio was that it had a clear theme, like a general flow. And since being 17 and 18, something like that, like my identity wasn't clear at all. And I had no idea what I was doing, so I developed most projects about myself and around my sentimentality. And at this point, we can call it like a coming of age theme, or sometimes like narcissism. And so, the applications. Since last school year, most art schools in France have integrated the application systems to Parcoursup, which is where most schools go to. And since I was one of the last people to sign up via the school website, like I can't really tell you much how it really goes on right now. But yeah, so you usually need a letter of motivation, your portfolio, and your CV, like give or take, I guess. But I still think the portfolio is the most important, so don't sweat it for the CV, like CV, or your letter of motivation. If you do it like properly, it's going to pass. So for people who are taking the bac or have already done it, like you just need to pass it like at least a 10 and then you're good. And for those of you who are not coming from the French education, meaning like the baccalaureate, I think you'll probably need an équivalence or like a equivalence of your studies matching the baccalaureate score, which is like 10, but I am really not sure. So like, you'll have to look into it, I'm sorry. And a DELF level of B2, or in some schools, C1. So it really depends. So for those of you who are curious, I'll just tell you how my tests went. So I won't name any other schools other than my school that I'm in right now. For Déco, it went pretty great. I had a really nice jury. They didn't really give me any harsh critics. Everybody was nice, and I didn't muck up anything on my portfolio, so everything went great and fluid. It was really nice. And at the end, they actually asked me, oh, so can you actually live abroad for like 5 years? And that was kind of like the question, like, you got in. You know, I think I really had luck on the day of the interview. But for other schools, I guess some of them really didn't have the time to get interested or get attached to the person that I am, or get to actually know me. So that was a little bit of a downfall of how many interviews they have to do. Some of the juries looked tired, and some of them just blurted out some mean stuff at me. But I guess that really happens a lot, and especially, I don't know if it's only for foreigners, but I think sometimes people in the jury get a little bit irritated if we muck up, and maybe that's why they're harsh, or I don't know, maybe they're just having a bad day. Some juries weren't the nicest, I'll be honest, but usually I think they have seen hundreds, thousands of portfolios every year, so I think they know what they're doing. I'm not going to judge, but there you go. Usually interviews last about like 20 minutes, where you present your work for 10 minutes and then you kind of have like this long discussion for 10 minutes with the jury. And that's how it went for my interview at Déco. But for other schools where you didn't really have time, I even had to do an interview for like 7 minutes at some point, and that was hectic. So yeah, if you guys are preparing, prepare yourselves for the max, for the shortest amount of time. That's it. And if I really had to speak up about my final thoughts, I'll start with the hardest part, which is that I had to give up a lot of things. First and foremost, my time. I didn't really go out much, like once or twice a month max. I was spending day and night at my atelier, really just like working, only looking at my work. So that was really taking a lot of my time, and I had to give up my grades too. I had no fidelity at school because all my effort and time and energy were going into all my portfolio. So I couldn't study, nor did I have the time to go on nice holidays or a nice day out or anything like that. I would go out once or twice a month, I guess. To actually keep it like that for months, that was pretty hard, I guess, because at some point you just want to burst. But I kept it all, I did my best, and I'm content with my portfolio. And so yeah, I'm not sure if there's an easy part for this. I'm at least grateful that I didn't have to take any of those typical tests for like 3 to 5 hours, like about biology, for economy, or anything like that, because I really obviously suck. But more to point out what I really loved about this experience, I got to explore and discover myself as a whole, and I was also able to expand my limits. This might sound a little bit cheesy, but to actually force myself to have a better output than before was challenging, but it really made me grow and reflect on myself. Since my theme was all about myself, I feel more confident in my skin, I feel calmer, like I am a calmer person. I finally got to know myself, really get to know myself better. It's like I've become best friends with myself finally. I think it really was a great experience because I've never worked this hard in my life, and it's about time I did. And looking back at it now, so it's been like a year, I guess, and seeing it now, it's such a weird feeling. At the time, the biggest problem was, what if I don't get in, or like everything related to going into a good school. But now that I've done that, I start to realize there are bigger mountains to climb, I guess. I'm starting to feel a little bit incapable again, and at the same time, I'm still really stoked to do the stuff that I have to do, that I get to do. So it's a bit of a mixed feeling. Preparing my portfolio was a bit hectic, but I still like the experience and think it was worth it. And the mindset of just everything, I guess. The mindset during like preparation and everything. I think what really kept me going was somewhat the imposter syndrome and fear. I've never worked this hard in my life, and the whole time, like in my head, the thoughts I had were like, what if I don't get into any of the schools? What if my works are just really terrible, but nobody's just saying that to my face? What if I'm making a terrible mistake? What if I have to go through another year of this shit? Everything. I didn't want to humiliate myself. I didn't want to be humiliated by the teachers at school thinking I was cutting class for nothing, and I didn't want my parents to be disappointed in me, and I didn't want to make a fool out of myself in front of other people. So yeah, like I was genuinely scared. And I'm not saying that this is like the healthiest way, because this is pretty toxic. I mean, if you're loving what you're doing, like great. I think that's like the best possibility there is. But like with the pressure and all, and I think most people who are getting into art schools like this, like where there's kind of a lot of competition and pressure, they already have gone through this phase probably. So if anyone's in this phase, like keep going. That's what I recommend, and see what happens, because you never know. So I hope you guys found this video interesting and useful, because like a few years back, I really wanted this type of content really bad, but there wasn't enough. So I hope I gave you at least a little bit of help. And please write down in the comments below of what you would like to know more. If you have questions, ask, because I'll reply pretty quickly. And for those who are already in art schools in France, please do share your stories so like everybody can share information. And finally, please like and subscribe, and thank you for watching. Stay tuned for my next video.